Really, the majority of what I do is helping companies build their industry voice, and part of doing that is also creating my own industry voice because I have to sort of walk the walk if I'm going to talk the talk about creating industry voice. So I do a lot to build my own industry voice, and I'll tell you, I don't do everything perfectly. Just because I am selling this as a business, I am constantly learning how to improve my own way of selling. And honest to God, you look at that as most people in the industry, they like the classic cobbler's shoes scenarios where his kids go barefoot. A lot of people always think about their clients and what they do for their clients first and don't focus on themselves nearly as much because you're worried about other things, and the other things are what's making you money. But you really have to focus on yourself, and if you're whatever your prowess is, if you're not doing it good for yourself, it's difficult to sell it to your clients. So I always highly recommend that. 90% of my relationships with PR firms is very, very positive, very, very good. I've had a few negative experiences, and when I wrote that story, the PR firms that I had good experience with all commented, and what they said is, A, thank you for bringing this to light, but B, we know stories like this hurt our brand as a collective whole, as a Damon. And I don't mean to do that, and I kind of made it clear in the post that, I do have very positive relations, but this PR firm in particular, which I didn't name, didn't choose to form a relationship with me, and they were very rude about it. And just, I guess, knowing how to deal with people, which is what you do when you're a comedian, but you know what, knowing how to deal with people, you don't need to be a comedian to be able to do that. It's just how I handled it. I did not want to out the company or the client they were representing, but I wanted people to be aware that this kind of behavior is not appropriate. And again, it was a series of small things that collected to be a whole. If any one of these things was done alone, I wouldn't have cared and just moved on. But it was the collective of the small things that made the whole that became the problem. No. So the thing that PR does very well is owning relationships. And social media allows you to own relationships, but I think maybe the reason that that term has come about, or that PR is dead, social media is taken, is that you don't need to be in PR to own relationships. Heck, we've owned relationships without, PR before, but the job of PR is to own relationships and own the important relationships and own the line of the relationships to whatever's key in your industry. That's why most PR firms, stay in a category like, in technology. Because if I worked on technology for this one client, then it's going to be so much easier to do a technology thing for this other client because I already have all these relationships that I built with this one client, obviously. I think actually social media makes the process of building relationships even better because now you have more tools to build relationships outside of the phone and email. So it's a great, great tool. The problem comes when they start abusing the tools for building relationships, hence what happened in this case where I get a mass emailed request where the opening line was, please write a blog post for us, for which it was the equivalent of me saying to the PR firm, I just launched a new company, write a free press release for me. There truly is no difference because that's what I do for a living. I make custom publishing. There's no acknowledgement that I do that. There's no acknowledgement of what I write on my blog would be relevant to this company. By the way, there's plenty of stuff I write on my blog that's relevant to this company. What they should have done is typed something in my search box on my blog, of which works very well, found a story or two, spent 10 minutes reading it, and say, David, we read this story about you. I just can tell you that if they spent those 10 minutes, the chances of me writing that story would have jumped dramatically. The client who actually friended me on Facebook, this is one of the other sort of problems. The client had friended me on Facebook. I responded to him, and then he never responded back. Or he made a friend request, excuse me. I responded saying, like, who are you? Like, tell me about yourself. You initiated the request. And then he never responded back. Yet I'm getting a message, this mass email message, like, hey, write about that guy. You know that guy who asked to be your friend and then ignored you when you sent an email directly back to him? Would you write about his company? Of course not. In fact, what I should do is slam him. But I was nice not to expose who he was. Well, first of all, it just starts with building a relationship. Anything. This company did not have it. Not only that, this guy, who I was hoping actually also to do business with, I should mention that I work on both sides of the street with PR firms, in that I sometimes partner with them to do business because I do custom publishing, and sometimes they pitch me things, and I do keep it very separated in that way, but I have good relationships, and they actually take an action to build relationships. Now, I know there are a lot of journalists out there and whatnot, but you have to understand, if you choose the mass mail route, if you choose the, blah, let me explode it out there, everyone listening, then you're going to run the risk of offending someone. And the question is that worth it? Is it worth it for me to get, if I send out 1,000, messages to 1,000 journalists and build no relationship, and I send the message where it begins with, write this for us first, before I mention the company, because by the way, most, interactions are just a flat-out press release, which I have to say, I delete 99% of them. The best way to get something to me is to acknowledge that something's related to something I wrote before. Now, I know this takes legwork and time, and it's hard. It's so much easier to write a mass mail. There are other ways to handle it a little bit more efficiently, but the bottom line is just physically meet and know the person. Answer the calls. I just have to say, this PR guy who I was trying to build a relationship, had ignored me multiple times, kept putting me off, constantly, finally had a phone call with me, God knows, after like literally a month of hounding this guy. So, they really were kind of obnoxious to me. And other PR firms like, I will say Fred Hahn, who is actually, we built a relationship because we have a lot of mutual interests. Fred's an enormous geek. I will actually probably say even more so than I. He's a massive geek, so we have that communication relationship. And in fact, we went out to dinner, and I do this daily tech report, and because I appreciated all the valuable information Fred gave me, I threw out to him. I said, Fred, I have this tech report. I'm looking for stories. This is the kinds of stories I'm looking for. I'm handing this to you on a silver platter. It's essentially free publicity for a client if they're related to what I'm doing. More than happy to talk about it. At the time, Fred didn't have anything. I respected him trying to push a client that was completely unrelated. But as a result, if Fred ever emails or calls me, I will listen, and I will actually care about what he has to say. And he also knows the model of what I'm writing, so he'll know what's relevant to me. So chances are pretty darn high that if he does ping me with something that's related, and it fits in my report, I can probably use it, and it's interesting to my report. I appreciate when people tell me new good stories. I mean, I can't find them all.